Welcome to the Sales Leadership Awakening podcast. I'm Stephen Rosen with my wonderful co-host, Colleen Stanley. Welcome, Colleen.
Hey, welcome back to you. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. I'm glad you're doing well. Each episode, we explore the knowing versus doing gap, explaining why sales leaders and their teams often struggle to move from knowledge into action. And we have another exciting guest. Colleen, why don't you take it away and introduce our wonderful guest?
Absolutely. I need to have full disclosure here. I'm going to be very biased with this guest because I know Logan, and he is the Executive Vice President of Sales for National Land Realty. So, Logan, if you would tell our audience a little bit about the type of salespeople you manage, because this is a little different than we usually have had with the VP of Sales when you've got independent contractors, and really what the company does and who you serve.
Thanks, Colleen. Thanks, Stephen. So National Land Realty, been with the company now for over 12 years. Actually joined them right out of college, went to the University of Georgia. And when I joined the company at that time, we had 30 licensed agents and brokers working for us, and we're very small. But as you flash forward now again over these past 12 years, we're currently in 44 states from California all the way back east. And we've got over 440 licensed real estate agents and brokers within an LR. So I'll back up and just explain more about what we do. So our company is a traditional real estate brokerage firm that specializes in land. So we're able to represent clients and customers that are looking to buy or sell farmland, timberland, hunting and recreational land. We also do industrial land, residential development land, and commercial land. So we're able to cover anything that has dirt with it. And it's been a fun ride, and we've seen a lot of growth here recently. And my role mainly with the company as Executive Vice President of Sales is supporting our 75 managing brokers and their teams, and then mainly work on the business development side, especially when it comes to recruiting, acquiring firms, and adding agents and brokers to the team.
Wow. So you must do a lot of traveling.
I do a lot of traveling, but Zoom, obviously with COVID and everything, I think we've all got accustomed to doing Zoom meetings. So Zoom has helped immensely.
As part of the Sales Leadership Awakening podcast, we ask each of our guests what their awakening moment is or was. What was your leadership awakening moment, Logan?
I happened to be traveling one day, and we were on a Monday morning call. So I was in Kansas City, and on our leadership call that we have every Monday, we were talking about the different businesses that we had going underneath our umbrella of National Land. So we had the brokerage, which was the bread and butter of what we were doing at the time, but we had added a title company, and we were doing lending, and we started just adding more things to our plate. And right then and there, we started seeing that the title company wasn't doing as well. And it really struck me at that moment that we were spreading ourselves too thin. And I think as leaders, sometimes you always look for the next shiny object, and you started a jack of all trades and a master of none. And we felt like we had mastered the land brokerage side of things, the real estate side, and we're really good at it. But we tried adding new ventures. And instead of focusing on strategic partnerships, we said, why don't we do it ourselves? And I think that's really where we shot ourselves in the foot. As a leader, along with some of our other executives, we decided to pivot away from some of those spinoffs and get back to our roots of doing land brokerage. So it was definitely an awakening moment for me. And since then, that was about almost 6 years ago now, we've seen a lot of changes and are really back to, like I said, what we're best at.
So there is a real power to focusing and doing a few things extremely well. And that's one of the gifts that I got when I was in industry, is learning that a lot of companies try to do too much. And as you said, they become a jack of all trades as opposed and a master of none. You can master in a few areas, and I think you can do far better as a sales leader for sure.
Definitely. I completely agree with you. And it's a lesson to be learned, but if you can learn that early on, you'll succeed in life.
Logan, they'll talk about in real estate, there's a mantra, right? Location, location, location. And I always like to take that mantra and convert it to people, people, people. And with you guys having your growth, I think you said it went from 30 to now 400 plus agents. You've probably gotten pretty good about identifying top talent. And I know when we connected, you said there are 3 things that you probably learned over the years that helped National Land Realty become the success it is today. And that was passion, delayed gratification, and listening. And so I'm curious, how did those bubble to the top as far as these are the traits we're looking for at National Land Realty?
Definitely. That was a lesson I learned over the years. I think as being in the Recruiting world, trying to identify talent is the hardest thing to do. And as you mentioned, over the years, I started seeing common traits amongst the agents and brokers that we brought on that became successful. And the main part that you brought up there was the passion. I think it can be cliche, but loving what you do is so important. And I think sometimes people get into maybe a first job or a second job, and they're just trying to find their way in this world. And obviously, some aren't afforded the opportunity to go into something that they're fully passionate about right away because you got to pay the bills. But for us, as we look at talent, having a passion for land, having connection to land, whether they grew up on a farm or they're habit hunters or fishermen, they understand it. Not only do they end up feel like being successful because they know it so well, but they also are connected to that world. They work around in those circles. And so it makes their lives a little bit easier. That next point that you brought up as far as delayed gratification, that's a sales skill that I feel like people are losing. This world of instant gratification that everyone's seeking. Gosh, look at your phones, right? How many of us are looking down at our phones constantly and at its every beck and call? But for me, just paint the picture for you all. The average landowner in the US is above the age of 60. Most landowners, they still open the mail. They want to be sold. If you're going to sell them, they want to shake your hand and meet you. And texting someone or sending them an email is just not going to get the job done. And so that's one of the things I tell our new agents and brokers is that you really got to put in the time and develop those relationships. It's so key. And as you're forming those relationships, the last point of listening, when you're in front of those landowners, sometimes you just got to close your mouth and hear what they have to say. I think you listen more, you'll get further. So coaching our younger land agents and brokers that are getting into this space as they're out there meeting with landowners, building that relationship just through listening to them and asking the right questions is so key. But listen more, talk less is what I say.
But I'm curious, I think the passion you can maybe vet from the resume, right? From where they grew up, et cetera. Do you have an interview question to test a candidate for the delayed gratification skills? Because you're right, really to no fault of a lot of people, instant gratification because of technology can be the default. So how do you vet that somebody actually has delayed gratification skills?
Yeah, that's a tough one, Colleen. I think you can tell when you're interviewing somebody if they feel like they're just explaining themselves or over talking. And obviously, I understand that recruits can get nervous in interviews. The delayed gratification, that is a tough one that I really haven't cracked that code as far as a specific interview question that has worked for us. Maybe you have an example, Colleen.
One question I ask, or I've taught people to ask, tell me about the hardest goal you had to achieve and how long it took for you to achieve it. So I'm testing for resiliency. And then sometimes all of us have cases where the goal maybe took a year, it took 2 years. So I want to see if they have demonstrated in the past staying power. So that's a question that I've used and taught.
The question, I guess, in our interview process that equates to that is something that you persevered through. What's something, a moment of perseverance in your life? Where for me, that was more about just hearing the difficult time and trying to get them to open up to learn more about the candidate personally and even professionally, because it can go both ways.
Yeah, because adversity or resilience, which comes from adversity, it's a hard thing to teach. If somebody hasn't built the resiliency muscle by the time they're in their mid 20s, you can learn it, but I don't know sometimes if a company has the bandwidth by which to take the time to say, okay, finally, this person is resilient, has got the bounce back factor. So it's interesting, probably delayed gratification and resiliency actually go hand in hand when I think about it.
I mean, you can ask about bonus. If you got a small bonus every month, or if you waited for the quarter and you get a bigger bonus, which would you prefer?
There you go. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's good if that's what you're looking for. So you guys have very impressive growth. And one of the things that I really connected with was you talked about focus and focusing in specific areas. So are there several areas that you want to share with our audience how you provide your land brokers extra support in some very key areas, training, data technology, and how to market better? What are some things you do in those areas?
For us, I look at it 3 pillars that have grown this company. First, data. And for us, it was going out and getting land ownership information for every landowner in the US. So we knew who our target market was. And we went after that target market. In the early days, it was phone calls. It was 100 phone calls a day to landowners, asking them a simple question: what are the plans for the land that you own? And as you all can imagine, those conversations went in a million different directions. But that cold calling, I feel, is a lost art nowadays, or people shy away from it because they're scared to pick up the phone and dial. was a big proponent of how we grew, but cold calling and that networking through the data that we provide our agents and brokers is key. What we use the data for now, we provide direct mail campaigns and direct support to our agents and brokers using that data. Next pillar, technology. That's a big proponent to who we are as a company, providing technology to make our agents and brokers more efficient and effective when they're out in the field. I think efficiency is key. And so for us, the technology that we provide, we have a back-end system where our agents and brokers can manage their KPIs, see what their sales metrics are, goals that they've set for themselves, and are they on target to meet those goals that we've worked with them to set. And then also just being able to, again, manage sales data, manage their listings and their pipeline effectively. And then that last part, as you look at the different pillars, obviously marketing is a big one. So for us, we provide a lot of marketing support and lead generation to help them with some of that prospecting. For us, it's let's provide our agents and brokers with leads and teach them some of the prospecting skills and some of the talk tracks when they get someone on the phone or when they're in that meeting. And I'll have to brag on Colleen. We got introduced with Colleen, and Colleen did a little bit of sales training, but it was several years after that that we decided to build a playbook. And we did have a playbook before that, but we wanted to change it up and do something different. And so we brought in Colleen to help us with a new playbook, which has helped immensely as well. And again, that goes back to just the overall training. When an agent or broker comes in, we provide them with training, make sure they understand the process and procedures within our company, which we have fine-tuned, and then outlay first off what their first 90 days is going to look like, and then set them up for success from there.
It sounds like you've got a great things working well, certainly onboarding and what have you. Anything that you use specifically in terms of sales leadership training that you find really makes a difference?
For us, like I said, having a playbook is very important because in that playbook, we are able to coach through it. But I would say from just a leadership standpoint, we meet with our managing brokers, our leadership team, right? That's spread across the 44 states. We met with them on a monthly basis to go over company objectives and make sure that we're all pulling on the same road and pulling in the same direction, I should say, which is so important as a team. And it's interesting, Stephen and Colleen, too, our field being that we are a real estate brokerage, we're different than most of the other real estate companies out there. We're not a franchise model where everyone's independently owned and operated. The brokers come onto our team and are part of one unit. And even though they're doing their own deals, they are being supported by company and our support staff. It's definitely a unique feeling that we've created here at National Land amongst the agents and brokers. So the leadership aspect, as far as how we're providing those skills or tools to our brokers, it's the transparency and the openness that we've created in those meetings on a monthly basis and pushing them to support their agents and grow as one.
I heard coaching mentioned a couple times, and it sounds like a very strong job on accountability and performance management.
I think it makes it easier from a leadership because you have defined, hey, we want the passion. And when you're working with passionate people, I have to tell you, it just makes all the difference in the world, right? That you're not working with somebody that's just checking in and I'm doing this job until I find my passion. So I think it goes back to what you mentioned earlier. Now, what I know from working with you guys is that you also have a very strong culture. And one of the things that comprises your culture is you are a faith-based organization. And I'd love for you to share with the group the work that you do and provide for your brokers and their family in the way of your corporate chaplains, because right now there's a lot of conversation in corporations about mental health, mental fitness, and I believe you providing these corporate chaplains actually helps with that. So can you tell our audience a little bit about the work they do and maybe the difference it's made? And obviously it's got to be a little confidential because I know sometimes with grief counseling and such, we can't be telling stories, but I'd love for our audience to learn more about that.
Corporate Chaplains of America is we partner to be able to offer those services, and they do a tremendous job of supporting the over 440 agents and brokers that we have. Their chaplain services are spread out across the country. They have state-specific chaplains, and then they have even regional and local chaplains that can visit our offices and meet with agents and brokers and our staff back in Greenville, South Carolina. Having them on the ground is great because they're able to come in and check in and just talk to our sales team about what they've going on in their lives And then what's important is outside of work, everyone has personal lives. And sometimes obviously there's grief that comes with that they're dealing with. And corporate chaplains helps us with reaching out if someone's going through a difficult time to check in and let them know that they're there if they need any assistance, which has been tremendous. So we are a faith-based company. It is definitely something that we hold near and dear in how we've developed our culture. And as we think about it, as we continue to grow as a company, it's something that is very important to us. They've done a great job at helping us. And for us as leaders, I think it's important to recognize when someone's going through a troubling time in their life. Obviously, the job needs to get done, but I still think you need to have compassion and empathy and be able to work with your staff. For us, we celebrate with our agents and brokers, obviously in their sales success, in their personal life success, but also we try to reach out to them when we see that they've gone through a difficult time. And again, like I said, we work with corporate chaplains, so they're reaching out, but then we also have internal staff that will reach out. We will send a card, we'll send a gift, and try to, again, just offer any type of support we can to an agent or broker that's struggling or going through grief.
Obviously, I love that for so many reasons, Logan, because in our very busy world, you know we need to be efficient, but love and support is not efficient, right? It's just being there and being present and showing up. So I give a lot of kudos to the company for that. We just had a interview, Stephen and I, with a VP of sales with a tech company. And so we were talking about artificial intelligence. And I love the answer she said. She goes, okay, you guys, yeah, we got the artificial intelligence. I got my deck in my hand, my predictive analytics. But she goes, when you look at people challenges, it's not about the data. She said, you might have a rep that's struggling because their parent was just diagnosed with dementia or they've got a tough teenager. And I'm guessing your corporate chaplains can help with issues like that that are dramatically affecting their business performance. We still need to get the job done, but can you share a success story? I don't know if that's the right word to put around this, but that wouldn't break any confidentiality.
Actually, one of our agents was diagnosed with cancer and was going through treatment. And not only did our corporate chaplains reach out to provide their assistance and were available to talk to him, but we had different people, our executive team and within the company reach out, just speak to them. At the end of it, they got through all the treatments and are doing fine today. But they reached out to me and actually wrote me a card thanking me for everything that we had done and just the positivity and the well-written wishes and the prayers didn't go unnoticed. One thing I failed to mention, Colleen and Stephen, is that we actually started a Faith in the Field Facebook group that's confidential to the company, right? It's agents and brokers, but we invite their family members to join as well. And it's just a way for people to talk about their faith, whatever they believe in, they can share it within that group. They can ask for prayers for what they're going. So it's a safe space for some of that. And that's good.
It's the first time I've heard something like that, the employer setting that up. That's great.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. It's separate from obviously our company, our private company group, because we have a group for that too, but we separated, allow people to join. And it's been neat to see just the outflowing of prayers, and they'll post Bible verses or they'll talk about trials and tribulations or even good things that are going on in their life. So it's a really cool forum.
Sharing and caring.
Yeah. And you know what? Something that, again, in this pace that we work at, as the old saying, slow down to speed up. So thank you for sharing that. And Logan, you're taking me way back to when I was a VP of sales at Varsity, and our company was based in Memphis, Tennessee. And I decided that at my opening, I always had an opening show at our sales meeting. And so one year I brought in a group of gospel singers. And it was the only time the CEO ever questioned me. He goes, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm absolutely sure." Now, I'm telling you, my reps later, we're drinking vodka, tonics, and beer, but the meeting with that, it just rocked the house. I think it's important for people to know that you can have both here.
I have one question for Logan, just getting back to the faith. During COVID, what was the impact of having chaplains available? Most of us suffered different ways through COVID, and I assume that was something that helped. And what did you see, an increase in usage? What did you see during COVID?
Yeah, definitely an increase in usage during COVID. One of the things that we also provided was a Bible study. We did a company Bible study webinar each month. And that was just a way for a corporate chaplain to come on and lead that and get some face time with our agents and brokers. And we saw an uptick of attendance throughout COVID for that. So I think we're yearning for human interaction, and it created an outlet. Obviously, for corporate chaplains, that some were able to travel, but a lot of them were doing phone, doing a therapy and sessions over phone or over Zoom. But our corporate chaplain did a wonderful job at supporting our agents and brokers and giving them an outlet to speak to someone.
Yeah, fascinating. There's lots of things, Logan, thank you, that I'm walking away with. And I always stick to the stuff that I can relate to the most or that I believe in the most. And you mentioned the importance in your awakening moment about focusing on the right things. And then when I asked you about things you do really well, you talked about your 3 pillars. So I always think people who focus usually have 3 things they focus on. So to me, the walk away and my belief, because it aligns with my belief system, is that successful sales leaders don't do too much. They actually will find, again, people who've worked with me know I love the number 3. I don't know why, but I think you can remember 3 things. It's easier to remember. Maybe that's the reason why, or it's easier to focus. But the one thing you said unprompted was, I learned that focus was critical for success. And to me, that I think it's a walkaway that every sales leader should have from this wonderful interview.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear I was able to impart something.
I try to boil it down to something succinct, and that's what focus is, right? Colleen, what was your walkaway?
I think I'm going to go back to the passion, because even I've been really fortunate in my life that I feel like anything I've done, I've been very passionate about. And when you're passionate, to quote Simon Sinek, I think you also know your why. And so because you know your why, then you're willing to do the hard work, which is delayed gratification. But if you're really not passionate about what you're doing, you just sometimes won't do the work. So I remember when I got into this business, it would take me hours to prepare for a 2-hour session. It would take me 8 hours to write a blog. And today I can sit down and write out a first draft in 30 minutes. So I really hope people understand the power of passion and including that in their recruiting and hiring process. I think it just makes all the difference in the world as far as retention and people being willing to do the work it takes to be successful and happy. So that's my walk away.
I have a good friend who always reminds me, because he's always great at finding superstars. And he says, you hire for the things that you can't train for.
That's right. Yeah.
You can't train passion.
Yeah, exactly. That's powerful, Stephen, for sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Thanks, everyone. Logan, especially to you for joining us for another Sales Leadership Awakening podcast. As Stephen said in the introduction of this podcast, our mission every time is to help you bridge the knowing and doing gap in sales leadership. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today.
Thanks, Logan.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.